But I don't particularly want to talk too much about those, because what we've really got here today is Mr. Zan Kong, who's going to talk to us about the mark. So it's very unusual in any kind of spirits context to be able to get to the source material. So most distillers will produce all sorts of different things, either in different kind of age things, or they'll produce different distillates, and ultimately they will be the base kind of ingredients that will go into the final product which we love and enjoy. And it's very rare for a distillery to kind of make either bottle those ingredient bits individually, or for them to be accessible. So the fact that Worthy Park has agreed to kind of like open up the bonnet and look underneath, I think is an incredibly exciting thing. Now you will notice that these samples are on the small side, and there's two reasons for that. One is that they are at still strength, and the other one is they're damn pungent, so we don't need to give you an awful lot. And we've got a little bit more of the 5 and 6, which are the actual kind of commercial samples, which these things then feed into. Okay, now there's one other thing I would like to draw your attention to, if I may just step down and wave this piece of paper. There we go, one of these things. So we are running a competition. If you want to do one of our courses, a level 2 online course, so if you can fill that in and hand that in either to us, members of staff, or we've got a little booth outside there, just to kind of find out a little bit more about our courses. However, it's not about that today, it's about the very, very delicious Jamaican rum. So here we are, it's Mr. Zan Kong.
Thank you, Nick. This is pretty cool. Thank you all for coming. I know it's 12:30 on a beautiful Berlin day. If anybody else was like me, stuck in my Uber and had to ride a goddamn scooter the last half a mile here, thank you for coming. But no, I really appreciate it. I know there's a ton of stuff going on. It's a great program. I love BCB. It's one of my favorite events. And when Nick, proposed to me that we do a little Worthy Park tasting, I couldn't turn it down. So thank you to WSET and Nick for bringing Worthy Park here. So, as we talked a little bit about, or Nick introduced, I should say, we're going to go through some of our distillates that we make at Worthy Park, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about the estate, a little bit about Jamaica, a little bit about the culture and island, and what makes rum really unique to Jamaica, and how we consume it, how we drink it, and how we approach it as well. So yes, without further ado, and I will tell Nick to keep me on track, because if anybody knows and has given me a microphone before, I could stand up here for the next 3 days. All right, so Worthy Park, we're a small little estate of 10,000 acres. We're located in central Jamaica, the parish of St. Catherine. Has anyone been to Jamaica? Not named Sam, because he's my homie from Jamaica, so everyone's been there. Outruche, North Coast, or wherever you guys, yeah? So there's a brand new highway that takes you from Kingston to Outruche. We're about an hour south of Outruche, an hour north of Kingston. So we're right in the middle. When you fly over, you can actually see all of Worthy Park Estate. Now we're about 10,000 acres of land as well. So this is actually what, this is where the little volume of this one. So this is my sweet little island home of Jamaica. Like I said, it's about 10,000 square miles. Worthy Park would be right about here, where Berlin is, driving north of Kingston and south of Outruche. And yeah, that's our little island home. Just to give everybody kind of a frame of reference about the Jamaican rum producers that are on island, this is where Worthy Park is. We're in St. Catherine. You got Money Musk, which is in Clarendon. Ray and Nephew also has a distillery called New Yarmouth, which is also located in Clarendon. Appleton Estate, which is in the parish of St. Elizabeth. And you got Hampden and Long Pond located in the parish of Trelawney. Now, these are also where sugar estates were. If you go back to the turn of the 1900s, we had about 150 sugar estates in Jamaica, and with those 150 sugar estates, you had 150 rum producers. So, now we're down to 6, and a lot of that is because of the decline of the sugar industry. Worthy Park and Appleton, we're the only producers in Jamaica that are making sugar and making molasses. And Worthy Park is the only producer on island that uses 100% of our own molasses for rum production. The Long Pond sugar estate closed a few years back, and Money Musk, they didn't operate this last crop season. But let's get right into the rums, shall we? So the first one, number one. Each distillery that produces marks of rum usually comes up with some really fancy technical name for their marks of rum. We don't do that at Worthy Park. If you've ever met my bosses, they're very pragmatic and they're very straightforward, and everything is very consistent at Worthy Park. So WPEL stands for Worthy Park Extra Light. And we classify our marks based on ester levels. For those of you that aren't familiar with esters, in my non-scientific mind, it's basically the chemical compounds that give you flavor in rum. So when we talk about Jamaican rum being high ester rum, it's because we have, through our production, which I'll go through, our ester levels are a lot higher than column still or other types of production. Now, feel free to pick those up and nose the samples. I will tell you before you get started, this is at 88.83%. So it is off our still, so it is very strong, so I just want to warn everybody that before you get into it. I tend to forget that not everybody's used to drinking high-strength spirits all day like we are. So I do forget, so forgive me every time you pick up a sample. Feel free to shout and ask me what the percentage is before you put it to your mouth. I'm going to go into a lot about the fermentation, but for the WPEL, it's a 30-hour fermentation time, and it's temperature controlled, and it's also a closed fermentation for that. Now, the type of yeast that we use for this one is a dry activated yeast. There is a lot of talk about yeast in Jamaican rum at the moment. We do use a variety of yeast. One of the reasons we use commercial yeast is for consistency. We're a producer that we're trying to make rum every year, and we're trying to make, especially when you look at our blends, we're trying to make sure that when we bottle our rum bar overproof today, and next year and the year after, you're getting a consistent product. So that's one of the main reasons we use a dry activated yeast. Ester range for this one is 30 to 60 parts per million. Ester range is another one that is a very popular topic for a lot of people who are talking about Jamaican rum. The thing you have to recognize about esters is they're never going to tell you whether a rum is good or not. They're never going to tell you, people gravitate towards high ester rums because it's kind of trendy and it's kind of hip, and there's a reason for it because of the flavor profiles that you get. Like when the bar guys are working with it, they want that funky high esterness. But ester count in rum will never tell you if you're going to like a rum or not. This is 30 to 60 parts per million, which is relatively low for Jamaican pot still rum. But it's still funky, and it's still got a lot of those fruity flavors that you expect from our rum. This is used in a blend component, primarily as a blend component. So when we get to our rum bar wide open group, you'll see how we incorporate that into the blend. Any feedback on those? You guys have notes? I know Sebastian here has been getting into it pretty heavy. What kind of notes are you guys picking up on that? And
so this is the first time I would have had these, so I'm having these for the first time as you. Now, when I'm tasting that, you've got to kind of work past some of that heat. There is a lot of kind of clear alcohol power in that. But if you only take a very tiny amount and you put that into your mouth, there is actually an incredible kind of soft roundness to that structure. But there's an incredibly pure apple aroma in there. And there's nothing that's particularly kind of like bacterial or sort of or particularly funky on this, but there's an absolute clarity in that kind of very clean kind of fruit note that runs through it. I mean, you might kind of have that and think, well, this was made from apples, but it's not. I mean, that's fundamentally is driven by yeast. And the esters are made by yeast during fermentation. And that really is, that's very pretty, in the best sense of that word.
Like soursop. I don't know if any of you had soursop, but it's fucking awesome. Excuse my French. Alright, the next one that you have there is one called WPL M12. Now that one is it's in our rum bar silver. It's in our 40%, it's in our 40% rum. I warned it, please don't dance when I play the music, but you didn't listen to it. This one, the ABV on this one is 86.45. Typically, we like to say our rum comes off distill at 85 to 87%. You know, give or take a percentage point. As high as 88 as you saw from the first one. Similar fermentation time, the 30 hours temperature controlled fermentation. The cool thing about this one is we use an isolated proprietary yeast. So when we built our distillery again in 2004, we identified a specific strain of yeast from our cane fields, and that one is the yeast we use for this fermentation. We also have that yeast in a yeast bank stored in the States. Should, knock on wood, anything happen to our cane fields, we can always regenerate and replicate that specific strain of yeast. This one is used for aging and as a blend component as well. And the ester range for this one now is a little bit higher. It's between 60 to 119 parts per million.
This really is extraordinarily different and it's that step up. There are two reasons for that. One is a step up in the ester level, the other one is almost certainly what that yeast specifically is doing. But you've gone from a very kind of pure clean apple in one to stuff much kind of over-rots, and there's a real kind of ripe, much more tropical fruit aroma in there. Also, when you put it in your mouth, and please only do tiny bits because it is quite strong, there's something a little bit like sort of grippy and firm in that texture. Again, when you raise ester levels and when you kind of raise the amount of aromatics in there, it does do particular things onto how these things will feel in the mouth. So you might kind of go, well, here's a particular ester, and at a very low level it will smell like X. Once it comes up much higher, actually it can shift in how you perceive that, but it can also have an effect on texture. There could be other stuff in here to do with what cups, now you're doing a cup on this as well. It doesn't feel particularly headsy or tailsy, it just feels like this is something that's coming from that concentration. The fact that that's the same length of fermentation time is just, well, this is clearly being driven by the yeast. It's the same stuff that's going in there, it's the same fermentation management technique. It's the yeast that have driven that quite significant difference. And suddenly, even just from two different marks, you've got, well, I've just got two enormously different things. I've got blending functions, and we've only just kind of got going. So that's a really, really striking thing. And what's driving that difference? Yeast, pretty much.
And I'd just like to add also, for those of you that don't know, it's only one type of still that we use at Worthy Park. So everything, all these marks are coming off the same exact hot still. A little bit of history about Worthy Park. We were established first in 1670, so 15 years after the British captured Jamaica from the Spanish. The Spanish took Jamaica in 1494 when Columbus landed on Jamaica. I don't like to say he discovered it because there's people there already. So he landed in Jamaica in 1494, and the Arawak Indians, who were living a relatively peaceful life, soon were lost. Yeah, a little bit of history. When the British took the island from the Spaniards, they actually failed. They tried Hispaniola, they couldn't take it. They tried Cuba, they couldn't take it. Because both of those islands in Spanish were heavily populated. There was about 2,500 people in Jamaica in 1655. The British landed with about 3 times that many soldiers, so it was a pretty cakewalk for them. Worthy Park, we are the oldest currently active sugar producer on the island. Our first record of sugar production is 1720. And we've done sugar every year since. So next year is 350 years straight of us being a commercial sugar producer in Jamaica. Our first record of rum production is in 1741, which is it's actually in the archives in Spanish Town because the owners at the time at Worthy Park were actually miners because the father had passed away the year before. At that time in Jamaica, if you had a miner who was owning a sugar estate, you had to declare with the government how much rum and sugar you were producing. So in 1741, Worthy Park produced 3,000 gallons of rum, which is a far cry from the nearly 1 million liters that we're doing right now. In 1918, the current owners of Worthy Park, Gordon, who's my boss, his great-grandfather bought Worthy Park, so they're nearing 102 years of running the estate as well. So, we're family-owned and operated, and we're Jamaican-owned and operated, which is pretty good as well. Now, I said we started rum in 1741. We're not the oldest, we're not the longest continual rum producer in Jamaica because we took a break in 1962. There was an overproduction of rum on the island, and the spirits pool basically proposed to some of the producers to stop making rum. At the time, Worthy Park, we were a commercial producer, but we didn't have a brand. So just like our sugar, just like our rum was sold as a commodity, so we sold it to brokers, we sold it to bottlers who then traded it and bottled it or blended it, did whatever they had to do, but we didn't have any brand. So it was very easy for us to sell our molasses on the open market. So we did that in 1962, and then in 2004, we decided to build a new distillery, get back into the rum business. So we're really a pretty cool contrast because we're the oldest estate on the island that's still in operation with the newest pot still on the island. We put in the pot still because we wanted to stick to the traditional way of making rum in Jamaica, but we fully automated it. So it's we're this cool contrast of old and new, which is pretty special. And which brings us to present day. So, like I said, we're family owned and operated. We're the largest sugar producer on island. We have been for the last 3 years. Hey! Sorry, my peoples. We're the largest sugar producer on island. Come in, there's seats up front. Don't be shy. No, you have to now because everyone's looking. So we've been the largest sugar producer on island for the last 3 years. And we're the largest molasses producer on island as well. Now Jamaica's a net importer of molasses. So we did about 8,000 tons of molasses last year roughly. Jamaica as an island imported another 50,000 tons. So we are a big deficit of molasses in Jamaica. Now in the I'd say last 4 or 5 years, we've made the shift from being a bulk producer, primarily a bulk producer, to having our own brands. We launched Overproof in 2007, and we come out with a Worthy Park single estate line in 2017. And then with our sugar as well, we've now took control back of selling our own sugar, and we're doing all the marketing in-house now. So in Jamaica, you see a lot of Worthy Park sugar. Some countries here, I know Italy has Worthy Park sugar, and some of the islands in the Caribbean as well are starting it. So we're now trying to capture that value and bring it back home, is what we're trying to do. So our sugarcane fields. This is an aerial view of Worthy Park. We have a lot of houses on property. Pretty much everybody except for the sales and marketing department lives at Worthy Park. But we have about 4,000 acres total of sugarcane out of the 10,000 acres of land. And in the early 1970s, we had as much as 12,000 acres of property, but the government at the time, they decided to buy back some land from us to give to votes, and we lost some of our property. But it was up in the mountains, and we didn't use it for anything anyways. Sugarcane fields in Jamaica, we still cut most of our fields by hand. About 80% of them are still cut by hand. A lot of that is to do with the topography of the land. The 20% of land where we do use a combine cane harvester is the only land that is flat enough for us to use it without it tipping over. Now, cutting with a cane harvester is obviously much faster, but the advantage we have by cutting by hand is it gives us a more efficient cut of sugar cane as well. So the cane cutters will do 2 cuts. They do a cut at the bottom right above the root, and then they'll cut the screen stuff up top. So we know exactly, we're cutting exactly enough of the sugar cane that we need. Versus when you use a combine cane harvester, if you look around the room, we're all different heights. So just picture you're going to cut at one level. You're going to cut too much off of some cane, you're going to cut too little off of some. The other advantage is when we're cutting by hand, we do a controlled burn of the field. That's why our cane looks a little darker. And that cuts all the dead grass off of the sugar cane for the farmers, making it a little easier for them. That's Boxer, go figure. When we're cutting cane, we lay it down in these rows, and then the tractors then go through and pick up the cane and bring it to the sugar factory for processing. And then this is a view of what it looks like on the fields where we do cut by combine cane harvesters. Now our fields, we replant our fields an average of 7 years. So that means some of our fields last as long as 9 years, 10 years. Some of our fields we need to replant 3 or 4. And we do that basically when the yield of sugar cane is no longer as profitable as it should be for us. Now at Worthy Park, we have some really good farm practices, and we have some fields that haven't been replanted in 20 years. which is pretty cool. We have 20 varieties of cane, of which 3 are the most common. And what we do after the cane fields are cut is about a week later, a week or two, you start to see the cane shoots regrowing, and our farmers will go and supply the field. So every gap between the cane, we'll plant little pieces of cane. So, like beside Eddie, there's a gap there. This is the cane field. We'd go in and we plant cane there, plant canes in that seed, just so we have as much density as possible in the cane fields. And that song, so I go back to a little bit of history. That song, if anybody has heard it before, in the lyrics they're talking about if you continue to bun down our herb fields, we're going to bun down the cane fields. Because at the time the government the U.S. government was cracking down on the drug trade in Jamaica. So the song was saying, if you keep getting rid of the ganja, which is how we're making our money, we're going to burn down the cane field, which is how you're making your money. So. Go to the sugar factory. We've been the most efficient sugar factory since 1968. A lot of that is due to the fact that we're family owned and operated, and the Clark family has been operating Worthy Park for 101 years, and they know what to look for. They're also owner operators. Gordon lives on property. His uncle, who's his co-CEO, lives on property as well. His uncle, who's actually set to retire, has lived in the same house all his life, except for 4 years where he went to college. So he was born, grew up in the same house, went away to university, came back, and has lived in the same house. And now he's in his early 70s. So when I talk about the Clark family being owners and operators and farmers at Worthy Park, it's no joke. I talked a little bit about efficiency. We measure efficiency based on how much tons of cane it takes to make a ton of sugar. At Worthy Park, it takes us about 9 tons of cane to make a ton of sugar. The nearest competitor to us in terms of efficiency, it takes 13.93 tons. So nearly 5 more tons to make a ton of sugar. We bring our cane to get measured for density, so we do a sample of it, and we measure the yield of sugar and fiber. That's how cane farmers get paid, based on the quality of their cane. We bring it over to the factory, and these 60-ton cranes bring it over to start processing. We start by washing it, get rid of any residual mud, anything that's come in on the tractors. Then it goes to one of our 5 mills. Each of our mills is about 42 inches wide. Now, all the sugar factories in Jamaica are rated based on the size of your mills and how much cane you should crush in a year. Now, Worthy Park, we're rated to do about 13,000 tons of cane sugar a year, but we continually do about 25,000 tons because of our efficiencies. So the cane gets crushed in these 5 mills that are on the left-hand side here. And the gas, which is the leftover fiber, we store it because we burn it to create steam to power sugar factory. So that steam creates electricity. Pretty much all of the buildings at Worthy Park, including the distillery, are powered by electricity we generate at the sugar factory. That's just it, the boilers burning. Now, when the gas leaves, you're left with what we call muddy water, or the juice for the clarifier. We add lime to this, and it separates the clear juice from the muddy water. The muddy water goes to a rotary vacuum filter where we extract the last extraction of juice if possible. That mud then goes back to the cane fields to act as fertilizer. The clear juice then starts going to one of our 5 evaporators. So it goes from this to this, and then through a series of 5 evaporators, we reduce the water there, and you're left with what we call cane syrup. And then that cane syrup goes to one of our vacuum pans, and in those vacuum pans is where we grow the sugar. After that process, this is just our evaporators on the right here, and these are our vacuum pans on the left. After that process, you're left with what's called massacrete, and the massacrete is molasses and sugar together. That goes to the centrifuge, and it separates, and you're left with the cane sugar and molasses. So that's our cane sugar, and that's what it looks like after it gets separated. Now, after the first run of massacrete, you're left with A sugar. A sugar still has about 70%, the A molasses has about 70% sugar in it left. So that goes back to processing and you're left with B massive wheat. You get B sugar, which is commercial grade sugar, and B molasses. B molasses still has sugar in it, so that goes back again to the vacuum pans, and you're left with C massive wheat. The C sugar is melted down because it's really small already, and we put that back into production. And the C molasses, which some people refer to as final or black strap, that goes for distillation. And the reason we go through all these steps is because, again, we're trying to be as efficient and consistent as possible and extract as much of the sugar from the process that we can. Now, our sugar after our molasses, is usually about 50% sugar content in it, which is very low for a sugar factory in Jamaica in a good way. A lot of the other sugar factories are left with about 55–60% residual sugar. So, which is great. I mean, because we're an efficient distiller as well, we're okay with that. But some of the other distilleries don't really like using our molasses because it's harder for them to extract. Okay, enough of my talking, and I'll let you drink some more rum. The next one is our WPL, which is our Worthy Park Light. Now, this one, it was diluted down to 69. I apologize about that. It should have been about 85%. WPL is our most common mark of rum. It's the one that we've been aging since we started distilling rum again in 2005. So majority of our rums that you're coming out with now that are older will be this mark. So like our Worthy Park Single Estate Reserve is this mark that has been aged. This one is as well as a 30-hour temperature controlled fermentation. And we use a dry activated yeast for this as well. And ester range is the same as the one we had before, which is 60 to 119.
So this is almost exactly the same mark as this number 2, but you use the activated yeast rather than your isolated yeast. Okay. And I think it does show kind of benefit if you go between 2 and 3 now, that you can see, well, there is some kind of familiar similarity, but the fruitiness in 2 is that much riper, that much more kind of slightly overripe, but whereas you go to 3, it's a little bit cleaner and purer, but it's still much bigger and bolder than we would have had from number 1. So it again just shows this kind of effectiveness with which you're just generating different kind of flavour profiles. And here, the key thing is you're just tinkering with yeast. And it's a very important kind of like lesson to show that yeast selection is no kind of idle consideration for distillers. It really is a very significant choice in terms of what flavour can be generated and then what outcome you're going to get as a spirit. Now, there are many other things that go with that. It's not just the be-all and the end-all, but for a tiny single-cell critter, it really does have a very significant impact on what happens in a spirit at the end of the day.
Thank you. All right, then the next one, number 4, is now we're going to take a little jump up to our highest ester mark that we produce, and this is the Worthy Park Extra. Now, this one, the fermentation is much different. This one goes up to 2 to 3 weeks, and there is no temperature control in this fermentation. It's closed as well. Hi, George. It's closed as well, but it is a lot longer because we don't control the temperature. This is what we use as our wild yeast. So this is the wild yeast. Sorry, let me correct myself. We use wild yeast for this fermentation, and the wild yeast that we don't use dunder or muck pits like some of our counterparts in the other parts of the island. But what we use is we develop a natural yeast through molasses, cane juice, and cane stalks from our field, and that bacteria that we develop is what we use for this fermentation. This is primarily as a blending component. When we have a rum or silver and a rum or white overproof, we only use a very, very small amount of this to really get that flavor to come through. We typically have only been using it as a component, but 2 years ago we actually started aging it. So we actually just launched a product with Amazon Whiskey, our partners in France, where it's this mark aged for 2 years. It's banging. Come find me later. I might have a little bottle in the back pocket somewhere. But this one is at 85.83%. Sorry again, I forgot to tell you guys that at the outset. I'm sorry.
So that's a bit different. And I think it's worth just stressing kind of like what this kind of 2 to 3 week business means. So the actual generation of alcohol by the yeast will be done in relatively short order, and it won't be some very small amounts may continue for 2 to 3 weeks, but you will have phases of microbial activity going through this. So you'll have a kind of a primary yeast phase, and then you'll get growth of bacteria. So a lot of this more kind of like very high tone and much more kind of exotic set of flavours are as much bacterially driven as they are yeast driven. So Zan made reference to dunder and muck. Now, we don't really have the time to go into the kind of like the mind meld that is dunder and muck, but essentially it's a means of cultivating bacteria in a way that is going to allow you to generate a lot of extra very, very, very intense flavours. And they just do it with their cultures, so that's actually, there are certain kind of efficient practicalities in that, because you don't have to deal with quite tricky management techniques to kind of do that. The people that really do use dunder and muck, and particularly muck, I think they're the only people that use it now is Hamden who use muck. Yeah. So Hamden does specialise much more in those techniques, but you're not the only people that would just do this like long sit, let the bacteria. Clarendon as well will do sort of a similar kind of thing. So it's just various different ways by which you can really ramp up that flavour. And again, you will feel there's this real kind of gritty, granular texture on the palate. Again, it's that once you get to these very high levels, it has an impact on how this thing feels in your mouth. I really would, I think I'm going to be going to your back pocket for that sample, that H stuff, because that really would be really very interesting to try. But as you may sometimes, and I think this is an important point to make, your stock, once you restarted distilling, hasn't kind of gone into the secondary market, has it? So you've always kept the stuff in-house. Do you sell some? Damn it, that's going to kill that point. But you do get bottlings of something like DOK from Hamden, but that hasn't been done by Hamden, that's kind of come through the secondary market. These things really aren't, the great Richard Seal would say, these things really aren't meant for drinking on their own. They are just kind of seasoning elements which then make something great. On their own, they really are quite challenging, but really, really super interesting.
Yeah, it's like hot sauce, right? Like, you know, you put a little hot sauce on your food to kind of bring it up to season it a little bit. We typically, I mean, the reason why we only started aging a couple years ago, you know, who's going to eat a spoon of hot sauce? You know, it's like kind of like with our highest remarks, right? It's like, it's cool and it's funky, and you know, there's a big, you know, push in the rum world now where we really want to get geeky and get into these really highest remarks, but I mean, I'm not going to sit there for a night and drink WBE all night. You know, it's really a seasoning agent, like hot sauce, I guess is the best analogy to use. All right, so I don't know how we're doing on time, but I'll keep going. So the distillery, prior to 2004, this was just cane fields. So it's 4 acres that we took over to build our distillery on. The reason we did, it's close to the main road, which is right out here, and our office buildings are literally where, you know, if you can see my pointer here on the brick, will be right about here, and our sugar factory is maybe like a mile away, and it's connected, our molasses tank is connected to our sugar factory via an underground pipe. So it's very clean, it's very efficient for us as well. Our water source is north here. We dug a well where we get through the limestone aquifer where we get the majority of our water. But we also have our secondary source at the sugar factory. It's gravity fed aqueduct, which has been there since the 1840s and it's still active today. So our yeast, I know I dove into a little bit, but these are the 3 types of yeast we use at Worthy Park. Our dry activated yeast, the isolated proprietary yeast, and the wild yeast, which we develop in one of these 4 open-air pre-fermenters. They're about 20,000 liters each. Those we put in molasses, cane juice, and cane stalks, and it's a 90-day process for that yeast development, and that is what we use whenever we're doing high ester rum distillation. Our yeast starts off in the lab and then moves to a propagator and then to what we call yeast buds. And when the yeast cultures have grown to the size that we need them to be, we add them then into the fermentation tank with molasses. Our 6 fermentation tanks are all 80,000 liters each. All of our fermentation is closed, and the 4 fermentation tanks we use for light rum are the ones that have temperature control, and the 2 that are for our highest rum production, there's no temperature control on those at all. Now our wash for our light rum, after our light rum fermentation, it comes off about 8 to 9%. Our high ester fermentation, after that the wash is about 5 to 6%, so it's much lower. This is just a peek into one of our fermentation tanks. And if you ever put your face in a fermentation tank when it's going, it's gnarly. I mean, you can breathe in clear for like 3 months after that. Nothing is alive in your nose anymore. Our distillation. This is our baby. If anybody used to watch MTV Cribs, this is where the magic happens. I think I just dated how old I am right there, but George is laughing in the back, so it must have been a little funny. But yeah, it's 18,000 liters, was designed by Forsyth in Scotland, who is arguably one of the industry leaders in pot still manufacturing. Just to give you a reference of how big this is, if I was standing up on this level, it's a second level, I'd be right about here. All 5'8" and a quarter of me my head would be right about here. Like I said, the wash goes in at about 6 to 9%. It's heated via an external steam calandria, so we don't do direct heat, we don't have any coils on the inside. And then through evaporation and condensation, our rum goes into the low wine retort, where it's about 30% ABV. Now this retort is heated by the vapors coming off of the first pot, and through evaporation and condensation again, our high wine retort has about 60% ABV. Same principle, the vapors coming off of the second pot, heat this one. Through evaporation and condensation again, we do our rum cuts about 85 to 87%. As you saw, sometimes it goes a little higher. We had 88% in our first sample. And this whole process is about 4 to 5 hours for us. Now, one thing that is really cool, we are fully automated, so everything is controlled by a touchscreen computer inside of our distillery office. Now, some of you that are versed in pot stills may be wondering what the hell this thing is. Any ideas? No? Maggie, I'm going to call on you since you're probably the expert distiller in the room. It is a rectification, I can't even pronounce it, it's a rectifier. We put that in after the fact to try to get a lighter cut of pot still. So after the still was installed, we went back to Forsyth, asked them to retrofit cool little rectifiers, so we get some light rum, we can do some more blending, we can sell some more oak rum, and the thing doesn't work. So it's actually just a beautiful copper 20,000 euro ornament that we have in our pot still. So it is completely open right now, and it's just there for decor. Thank you, Megan. So this is just a closer view of our low wine and our high wine retort. You can see there's a slight size difference in them, about 10%. And then on the right-hand side here is the external steam calandria where we heat the wash in the pot. That's just a look at our decoration. It's nice and shiny and pretty. And this is just our column where we do the condensation and the rectification of our final cuts. And this is our line arm, which is the first part of the pot still. Alright, so you hear me talk about pot still versus column still production. We didn't have time to get into comparing our pot still with column still marks this time, but just for reference sake for people, this is an idea of what our pot still is versus what some of the more modern types of stills are out there. And I also like to preface, it's not to say that our rum is better than what's coming off a column still. I think it is, but that's not biased. But it's not to say that you as consumers are going to enjoy it more or less. But for us, it's to teach the consumers that there is a difference, and what rum coming off a multi-column still is going to taste like versus rum coming off a pot still. It's like apples and oranges, right? Like you have to compare like and like. You can't say, you can't compare my fruit salad and Maggie's steak dinner because they're just different meals, right? It's completely different. So we gotta kind of keep that in mind as we're talking about the different rums. So we're a very artisanal way of producing rum versus a more industrial way. We only produce rum off of our still, but from the multi-column stills you can get neutral spirit, and sort of vodka usually comes off of gin, so you can produce a lot of different types of alcohol and spirits. It takes us about 2 hours to do 400 liters in our pot still versus about 10 minutes to do 400 liters in our multi-column. So completely just different scales and production that we do.
So I'm just going to put in one caveat on that. So what Dan's just talked about is a multi-column still. These are big things. So column stills come in very, very different sizes. When you're doing something like that, that will produce enormous volumes at very, very high levels of rectification. Who here has had rum agricole from Martinique? Splendid, that was made in a column still. So column stills can produce extraordinarily intense, extraordinarily amazing spirits. So who here's had Armagnac? Splendid, that was made in a column still. So column stills are not just the whipping boy of oh boo, here's all column stills are bad. Now it's about the piece of equipment and it's about how well you use that equipment. But the base point is with these huge multi-column stills you are producing very, very light spirit, and that's what you will do. And there's kind of no which ways around that. But don't just think that all columns are like that, because they're not. It's just kind of, that's my caveat. I'm now going to hand back to the interesting man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks for jumping in. We'll do that for next year's presentation. Our aging warehouse, we have about 10,000 barrels aging at Wood Park. That is not our aging warehouse, it's just a picture of some barrels that are sitting outside, but I liked it, so I put it in there. We get majority of our barrels from Brown Foreman. We've been aging rum since we opened our new distillery in 2005. While the majority of our barrels have been ex-bourbon, last year we brought in support in Madeira barrels to do some aging at Woodley Park, and this year we bought some cognac and those barrels to do some other aging at Woodley Park as well. We lose about 4 to 6% a year in evaporation, which is relatively low for the island because we are 1,200 feet above sea level. So it's really hot and humid during the day, but it gets cold at night. And I mean, when I say cold, it's cold for Jamaica, so it's about 19 degrees Celsius, 18 degrees Celsius. So at that point we're freezing, we're all dying, and we're lighting fires and drinking hot chocolate. But that usually that happens at night in the winter, I guess. And we do our aging warehouse open ventilation as well. So this is from inside of our aging warehouse. Now we stack 6 barrels on a pallet, and we go about 6 high. It's really, the distillery guys love me, and when I say love me, I mean they hate me, because I asked them for so many different aging samples, and the samples I asked them for, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be these easily accessible barrels that are here. We have a dude that works at the distilleries, and he's Xavier, or Xavier as we call him in Jamaica, and I asked him for some samples last week, and he had to basically scale between here to climb up to the top. And if you can kind of see, we have the bungs in the front of the barrels there, and it basically drills into there, collects a sample, and then kind of caps it closed. And he had to do it, 30 feet up in the air. We don't have as strict health and safety workplace regulations as we do in Europe, but yeah, that is our aging warehouse. And just to show you that even though we do stack our barrels like that in the Caribbean, we do have barrel management programs, so we don't just put barrels in there and kind of wait for them to see what happens. All our bottling and blending is done at Worthy Park as well, which is again why I talked about this being a single estate producer. So as you saw, our cane, our molasses, fermentation, distillation, blending, bottling, and aging is all done at Worthy Park. Which brings us to Rum Bar. Rum Bar White Overproof. We launched this in 2007. It's number 5 on your tasting map there. In Jamaica, white overproof rum, 63% unaged. This is the category of rum that we drink in Jamaica. We, as an island of 2.7 million people, we go through, last year it was about 600,000 standard cases, so 9-liter cases of this on the island every year. Now, this bad boy is not just for drinking on island, we cook with it. I didn't know you could drink it until I was about 13 years old, because my grandma used to put it on my forehead if I was sick. If you're a little congested, you put it under your nose and it clears your sinuses. If you're feeling a little fluish, in Jamaica everything's a flu. If your knee hurts, you have a flu in your knee. What was that? Insect bites, put it on everything. So your knee's sick, your back is sick, you have a shot of overproof with some honey and lime. Yeah, put it on. Eddie's got a child too. My son is teething right now. So we put, every now and then I'll put a little bit on my finger and put it on his gums to make sure he feels better. I truly don't know if it works, but he sleeps at night, so it works. That part works for us. I guess child security and safety is a little different on that too. Anyway, this is our flagship for our white overproof. We get a little distracted, but this is our flagship. It's a blend of 3 of our different marks. So it's a blend of number 1, the WPEL, number 3, the WPL, and then number 4, the WPE. So we blended those 3 rums together to get our rum bar white overproof blend. There's no sugar in it, but we do water it. We do dilute it down to 63%, and yeah, it's all unaged distillate that we blended together. The name rum bar in Jamaica, we came up with it because when we were doing our sampling for it, somebody said, boy, this tastes like the living rum bar rum, which means it tastes like very authentic traditional rum that you get from the island.
I love this rum. It really is an incredible example of how you can take a number of those different elements, and this is why it's so exciting to have these blending components here, because you can see some of that pure fruit from 1, you can see some of the complexity from 3, but also you can see how that really exotic and powerful stuff, which was present in 4, actually that you can feel that complexity, and you can actually probably appreciate that complexity more within the context of this, because it's not just so overwhelming. The actual aromatic complexity that exists within this, and the way it carries its alcohol, so it doesn't feel hot and burning, it feels really, there's a round, kind of softish, there's only so much soft as you can get when you've got this kind of higher proof, but it's a nicely rounded texture, there aren't any edges on that, this is hugely complex, and the finish on this just trundles along, and you're not left with anything kind of harsh or angular or kind of astringent in that. It's actually the aromas, it's the aromatics that persist. And I think this is just a very interesting way in which you can see, and it's very rare to be able to do this. You can see, well actually I've taken 3 quite interesting things on their own merits, and they are. And out of that you've made something that is just really quite extraordinary. So the whole point here with blending, and blending isn't just some kind of way of concealing problems, blending is a let's be honest, but when it's done well, when it's done with great consideration, it's about using your components to make something that you couldn't do any other way. And this, with those 3 kind of precursors and the final sample, it really is a very, very effective way of demonstrating that. So this is certainly something that I'm going to store in my memory bank for some time.
Thank you. And just as I was talking about rum bars, just to kind of give you an idea while you're sipping on that. A lot of people, when they come to Jamaica, they think they're going to be able to go to some bars, and the common thing is, hey, where can we go get some great daiquiris and some mai tais and some zombies and some really cool tropical tiki drinks in Jamaica? But you're not going to come here and get that. You'll get the pina coladas at the hotels that come out of the slushy machines, and the strawberry daiquiris that come out of the slushy machines. But this is how we drink in Jamaica. These are little rum bars. So there's about 20,000 of these rum bars located all over Ireland, predominantly in the rural areas of Jamaica. They're always very flashy and boasty because that's how we are in Jamaica. And they also have very interesting names. For example, this one is the Glitter Girl Sports Bar and Restaurant. This one here on the right is called One of a Kind, and it's not kind, it's not K-I-N-D, it's K-Y-N-E. I don't know. This one is Vibes HQ, and again it's V-Y-B-Z, or Z, not V-I-B-E-S. We have Sonia's Seafood Depot. Sonia's is a tongue twister. Sonia's Seafood Depot in Haberdashery. So you can stop in, you can get some lobster, some snappers, some fresh fish, you can get some toilet paper and some deodorant and some rum. It's a one-stop shop. What else do you need? And this lady is actually Andrea. She's right by Royal Park. She opens at 8 a.m. in the morning because she's right by the aluminum factory. So when those guys get off work, just like any other hardworking people, they deserve to have an after-work drink. They just get off shift at 8 a.m. in the morning. Now, the name of her shop is chill, drum, stop, chill, stop. They're all tongue sisters. But she spells it with a J, so it's J-R-U-M. Now the reason she does it may not seem logical, but there's a reason. Because when she had her first store, it was drum with a D, like proper strum, D-R-U-M. But then when the owner took that back and she opened up her own, she wanted to still call it drum, but she couldn't spell it with a D, so she spelled it with a J. Genius, if you ask me. And now this is how we drink when you go to these little rum bars. So you walk in and you order a cube or a flask of rum. It's these 200 ml bottles, and you order your chaser. So you get maybe a flask of rum bar in a tin, and the bartender will drop a bucket of ice, 4 glasses, your rum and your chaser in front of you, and you pay to make your own drinks. It's awesome, but it's just the way we drink in Jamaica. But these little rum bars, they're kind of ingrained in the social fabric of the island. You go there, you gossip, you catch up, you play some dominoes, you chat, you laugh, you listen to music, and kind of the trifecta of Jamaican rum drinking is rum, music, and food. Now everything from weddings to funerals to babies' christenings to Wednesday nights, you have to have those 3 things if you're drinking in Jamaica. So we're going to finish up with a Worthy Park Single Estate. Now we launched this one. It's a blend of our rums between 6 and 10 years old, all aged in ex-bourbon casks. Now this one started from number 3. So when number 3, WPL, came off the still, before we put it in barrels, we diluted it down to 70%. And then from there, we aged it. And now this is a blend of our rums between 6 and 10 years old. Bottled at 45%, and again, no sugar added in that as well.
So this is really interesting. I mean, we've got the base spirit, we've got the aged spirit. It's very interesting if you go back to the kind of the extent